She is a German girl. Her mother is German, but her father is African. Although she has German citizenship, people still call her Hitler's problem, because under the Nazi regime, Hitler wanted to build a so-called racially pure Germany, and Leyna became one of the targets the Nazis aimed to eliminate. The Gestapo had already broken into their home several times, looking for excuses to take Leyna away. Fortunately, Leyna survived each time by hiding cleverly. One day, while riding a train, she was subjected to another strict inspection by German soldiers. Her mother quickly pulled out Leyna's documents and told the soldiers that Leyna was her daughter. The soldier looked over the papers, then stared at Leyna for a long time, his face full of disgust, though clearly repulsed. He returned the documents to Leyna's mother and left. In everyday life, Leyna constantly faced discrimination and ridicule from others. Because of this, her mother had moved the family, including Leyna and her younger brother, many times. One day, they moved to a new city, and Leyna started at a new school again. But on her very first day, she was met with cold stares from classmates and intentional hostility from the teacher. Although this wasn't the first time Leyna experienced discrimination, the pain of isolation and helplessness still overwhelmed her already wounded heart. After school, on her way home, Leyna unexpectedly encountered a group of Jews being arrested by German soldiers. Even though she wasn't Jewish, Leyna deeply empathized with the discrimination and exclusion they faced. She stood frozen in place, watching the group of Jews pass by. Then, a few Nazi-influenced youth walked up to Leyna. Without hesitation, they shoved her into the group of Jews, saying she belonged with them. This entire scene was witnessed clearly by Lutz from across the street. But instead of rejecting Leyna, Lutz was instantly captivated by her and couldn't stop thinking about her. To protect Leyna and keep her from suffering the same fate as the Jews, her mother went to her sister for help. Her brother-in-law worked in a government office and had some connections. Leyna's mother begged him to create a fake document that would claim Leyna had undergone sterilization, because only a girl who couldn't have children might be allowed to survive. But the brother-in-law was too afraid of the consequences and flatly refused. Hearing her mother's desperate pleas behind the door, Leyna fell into deep thought. Eventually, under her mother's repeated begging, the brother-in-law agreed to help forge the sterilization certificate. However, when handing the document to Leyna's mother, he set a condition: they must cut off all family ties and never contact each other again. In order to get the life-saving document for her daughter, the mother reluctantly agreed never to visit her sister again. They thought the forged certificate would allow them to live in peace, but an accident changed everything. That evening, while passing by her mother's workplace on her way home, Leyna looked around for her mother, but she was suddenly hit by a fast-moving bicycle and thrown to the ground, her right cheek smashing against the pavement. Her mother rushed over, scolding the rider for being reckless. The cyclist was Lutz, and he quickly apologized only to realize that the girl he had knocked down was the one he'd been longing to see. Lutz apologized profusely and helped Leyna pick up her scattered belongings. He even introduced himself, but Leyna didn't respond. She gave him a glance and turned to leave with her mother. Leyna was cold to strangers because, though she had German citizenship, her skin color was different. This difference made her a target of constant mockery and exclusion. The long-term discrimination had made her afraid to talk to strangers, and in Nazi Germany, where racial purity was enforced, Leyna, who had African features, was a marked target for elimination. One morning, a German soldier suddenly appeared in Leyna's classroom. He whispered something quietly to the teacher. The soldier's unexpected arrival caused Leyna to panic. Her eyes widened, and she silently prayed he wasn't there for her. But in the end, the teacher called out her name. She stood up in a panic and grabbed her textbook, ready to leave. But the teacher told her there was no need to take it, she would never use it again. Hearing that, Leyna reluctantly put the book down. Luckily, her mother had already obtained the forged sterilization certificate proving Leyna couldn't bear children. Because of that, Leyna narrowly avoided being sent to a concentration camp, but she was told she could no longer attend school and was forced to drop out. Heartbroken, Leyna lay in her mother's arms, unable to sleep. What upset her even more was that a few days later, her younger brother received a government notice to attend the military academy founded by Hitler. For many years, Leyna had no friends. Her half-brother was her only companion. Now he too was leaving home to enroll in the academy. Already depressed from dropping out, Leyna was consumed by loneliness. Afraid that her son might be brainwashed by the Nazi school and end up hating his sister, the mother repeatedly told him, "No matter what happens, remember that Leyna is your sister. You must always protect her." The boy nodded obediently and said goodbye to his family before starting his new life. Though reluctant to part, Leyna could only stand by the window, watching her brother, her only friend, fade into the distance. After he left, Leyna began working in a factory with her mother. It was there that she saw Lutz again, the boy who had knocked her down on his bicycle. Lutz had been thinking about her ever since. He wanted to approach her, but his father, a Nazi officer, called him away. Lutz had no choice but to leave. Seeing him go, Leyna didn't think much of it and continued on with her mother. But a few evenings later, Lutz appeared in front of her again. Leyna still didn't speak and tried to walk away. Lutz called out to her, and she slowly turned her head. He looked at her but said nothing. Seeing his silence, Leyna turned again to leave. Lutz called out once more, but this time she didn't turn around. Nervous and unsure what to say, Lutz could only watch as the girl he admired walked away. The next morning, on her way to the factory, Leyna suddenly encountered a few German soldiers. She quickly hid in fear. From a distance, she saw the soldiers strip Lutz's pants to check if he was Jewish. Once they confirmed he was, they shot him on the spot. Leyna wasn't Jewish, but she was biracial. She had always faced scorn and exclusion. Though life in Germany wasn't happy, she still loved her country deeply. To her, Germany was the homeland that raised her. So when she heard the radio announce the German army's defeat, she felt sorrow. She stepped outside and tried to join the Hitler Youth to serve her country. But when they saw her, the members only gave her disgusted looks. Heartbroken and humiliated, Leyna ran away in despair. She turned onto a parallel street and followed the youth group from a distance. She trailed them all the way to a forest on the outskirts of town. Hiding behind a tree, she watched as they sang with joy, her eyes full of longing. There, she ran into Lutz again. This time, Lutz finally spoke to her, and even started singing a love song. His off-key singing made Leyna laugh for the first time. From then on, they became friends. Leyna, who had always been mocked and excluded, finally had her first real friend. They began seeing each other often and quickly fell in love. But because Lutz was part of the Hitler Youth, and his father was a Nazi officer, while Leyna was a target of persecution, their love had to remain a secret. Even if they ran into each other on the street, they had to pretend not to know each other. They could only meet in hidden corners away from others. But in truth, Leyna's mother had already noticed them meeting in secret. She warned Leyna not to see Lutz again. "You're from different worlds," she said, "just like your father and I once were." The mother didn't want her daughter to suffer the same pain she had endured. But no matter how much her mother tried to persuade her, Leyna had already fallen too deeply in love. She continued to secretly meet with Lutz. Leyna thought their love could quietly continue, but another disaster struck. That night, several Gestapo agents and German soldiers suddenly appeared downstairs at Leyna's home. Soon, there was loud knocking at the door. Leyna hesitated, afraid to open it. She crept closer to the door, though terrified. Her mother finally opened it. A Gestapo officer entered with two soldiers. The soldiers barged into the inner rooms and began searching. The Gestapo officer spotted Leyna immediately. He demanded to see her documents. Leyna handed over both her ID and the forged sterilization certificate. Given that Leyna had all her documents in order, was officially a German citizen, and had a forged sterilization certificate proving she was infertile, the Gestapo, despite their clear disdain, had no choice but to let her go. They thought she had passed the inspection, but unexpectedly, the Gestapo officer who despised Leyna lit her certificate on fire. Watching the document turn to ash, Leyna instantly sank into utter despair. Her mother quickly dropped to the floor, using the carpet to put out the flames, trying to save it, because without that certificate, Leyna would be taken away during the next inspection. But no matter how hard she tried, it was all in vain. The document had already burned to ashes. Mother and daughter could only hold each other in despair and cry bitterly. Despite losing the certificate, Leyna still took the risk to meet with Lutz from the Hitler Youth. They planned to go to the forest on the outskirts of town, but halfway there, they ran into a pair of German soldiers arresting Jews. The moment she saw the soldiers, Leyna's heart filled with panic. At that same time, another group of soldiers appeared from a nearby intersection. The German army was conducting a full-scale racial purge in the city. Leyna was near Lutz's home, and his officer father was away on a business trip. To prevent Leyna, who now had no documents, from being arrested, Lutz brought her to his home. He turned on his father's record player, and the soft, elegant melody filled the entire room. They wanted to dance together, but the moment they embraced, it quickly turned into something more. They lost themselves in their passion and forgot about time. When Leyna got ready to leave, she realized it was already past curfew. Lutz wanted her to stay the night, but Leyna knew her mother would worry if she didn't come home, so she decided to risk breaking curfew and return home. Lutz rode ahead on his bike to scout the way, and Leyna followed closely behind. Just as they arrived outside her building, a patrol car suddenly appeared around the corner. Startled, Leyna quickly ducked into hiding. A German soldier approached Lutz and began a strict interrogation. Lutz kept lying, trying to bluff his way out, but the soldier wasn't easily fooled by his clumsy acting. Since it was curfew time, anyone found outside was considered suspicious and subject to arrest. Lutz was just about to be taken into custody when another soldier recognized him as the son of a German officer. Only then did Lutz narrowly escape. After the soldiers left, Lutz reluctantly said goodbye to Leyna. Before parting, he gave her the ring his mother left behind when she died, as a sign that he was committed to marrying her. Lost in their love, neither of them realized this might be their last goodbye. As Leyna climbed the stairs back home, she saw that their Jewish neighbors across the hall had been taken away. She noticed the Nazi notice and the large Jewish star on their door and fell into deep thought. She saw her future in that moment because although she wasn't Jewish, she was biracial. In Nazi Germany's pursuit of racial purity, Leyna was also a target for elimination. The next morning, Leyna and her mother went to work at the factory as usual. Her mother scolded her for going out to meet Lutz alone and for coming home so late. She warned that if she had run into soldiers, she could have been arrested. But Leyna, deeply in love, said she couldn't stand being apart from Lutz even for a day, and insisted she had a right to love. While they argued, her mother accidentally bumped into a German soldier. She apologized in a panic and quickly tried to leave with Leyna, but they were suddenly stopped by a German officer. Her mother pretended not to hear and tried to walk away, but the officer grew more aggressive, and his tone became increasingly harsh. With no other choice, they both stopped walking. The officer ripped off Leyna's headscarf and furiously asked her mother why she had polluted the country's bloodline by having a mixed-race child. Her mother felt deeply humiliated but didn't dare speak back. The officer then demanded to see their documents. Her mother, hands trembling, handed over her own papers, but she no longer had Leyna's. A few nights earlier, a Gestapo officer who broke into their home had burned Leyna's papers out of disgust. Her mother explained in a rush that the Gestapo had destroyed them, but before she could finish, the soldier slapped her hard and shouted that she was slandering the Gestapo. Leyna, terrified, began crying. Then the officer said to her mother, "You've tainted the pure German bloodline. We'll give you a chance to make up for it. Let us take your daughter." But how could her mother bear to let them take Leyna? She firmly refused. The next second, the soldiers tried to grab Leyna by force. Both mother and daughter pleaded desperately, but the soldiers showed no sign of stopping. In a moment of panic, her mother screamed that she would go instead of her daughter. She said it was her fault for polluting Germany's bloodline. The soldiers agreed. Leyna could only watch in anguish as her mother was taken away. She collapsed on the ground, wailing in despair, powerless to stop what had happened. That same afternoon, Leyna's brother returned home from military school for a break. Not wanting him to worry, she lied and told him their mother had been sent to work elsewhere by the government and would return soon. Though her brother sensed the sadness on Leyna's face and knew she was lying, he didn't say anything. To find out what happened to her mother, Leyna went to Lutz's house. She hoped Lutz could help, since his father was a German officer, but the maid told her that Lutz's father was away on duty and that Lutz himself had been drafted and sent to the front. Hearing that Lutz had gone to war, Leyna felt even more helpless and heartbroken. A few days later, her brother left again for military school, carrying his luggage. Leyna was left all alone in the empty house. That's when she realized she was pregnant with Lutz's child. One day after work, while heading home from the factory, she ran into a group of German soldiers conducting inspections. Within moments, several Jewish women with fake IDs were arrested. From a distance, a German officer spotted Leyna. He immediately began walking toward her. Leyna's heart pounded in terror as the soldiers got closer. Just then, one of the arrested Jewish women tried to run. Leyna pointed at the woman and shouted that someone was escaping. Everyone's attention turned to the fleeing woman, and Leyna took the chance to run out of the factory. She ran as fast as she could, not daring to stop, but in her panic, she turned a corner and ran straight into a soldier's arms. Without any documents, Leyna was thrown into a military truck. She was sent to a concentration camp in Poland. Her beloved long hair was shaved off. The only stroke of luck was that she wasn't Jewish. In the eyes of the Nazis, she had simply polluted the pure German bloodline. She told a female officer that she had been sterilized and couldn't have children. The officer, moved by a bit of sympathy, assigned her to work in the kitchen. The others imprisoned with her were refugees, undocumented people, and political prisoners. In her spare moments, Leyna sat by the barbed wire fence, watching thick black smoke rise from the nearby Jewish camp. She often wondered what was being burned there, as the chimney never stopped smoking. Along with the smoke came fine white ash that floated down like snow. Little did she know, It was the remains of countless Jewish corpses. Each day, they were forced to stand in the freezing wind for an hour. Anyone who collapsed from exhaustion was dragged to the crematorium and turned into smoke. Soon after arriving, Leyna noticed a girl next to her had a foot wound that had become infected and caused a fever. Seeing that she was about to fall, Leyna rushed to help her stand and quickly returned to her place. It seemed like a small gesture, but in that camp, it meant saving a life. The two became close friends and began depending on each other to survive. Leyna had lied to the officer when she said she was sterilized. In truth, she was already pregnant with Lutz's child when she arrived. As time passed, her belly grew larger. If the female officer found out, both Leyna and her baby would be in danger. To hide her pregnancy, they wrapped her tightly in cloth strips. One day, Leyna stole a potato to feed her sick friend. She hid it in her clothes and walked back to the barracks, but she was too nervous, and the potato fell out. She picked it up and stuffed it back in, unaware that a soldier had seen everything. The soldier accused her of stealing food, but Leyna denied it. Still, the soldier didn't believe her. He ordered her to strip for inspection. Terrified, Leyna slowly unbuttoned her clothes. Just then, she saw a familiar figure in the distance. It was Lutz, the man she thought had gone to the front lines. In reality, he had been sent to the camp. Lutz saw her too and rushed over. He pretended not to know her and told the soldiers, "She's trouble, I'll handle her. I need to search her barracks too." The soldiers believed him and walked away. Leyna quickly buttoned up her clothes. Neither of them had expected their reunion to happen like this. Maybe it was because Lutz had left without a word when he enlisted. Maybe it was because he was now part of the system that had imprisoned her. Leyna said nothing and walked away despite Lutz calling out to her. The next day, Lutz came to the kitchen where Leyna worked. He found an excuse to take her away. In a quiet corner, he explained how he had been drafted without choice. He told her that his father had placed him in the camp as a guard and that he never hurt anyone or gave up on their love. To avoid suspicion, Lutz left quickly after speaking. Before leaving, they arranged a secret meeting for that night, but Leyna didn't show up. Only the next night, when everyone else was asleep, did she sneak out. Lutz was still waiting at the meeting place, holding food. After all the pain and waiting, the two lovers finally embraced again. That's when Lutz learned Leyna was carrying his child. But as someone crushed by the times, there was nothing he could do to save her. All he could do was hold her tightly and give her a moment of warmth. The German officer suddenly noticed a girl standing barefoot in the crowd. He immediately walked over and questioned her about why she wasn't wearing shoes. Before joining the army, this officer had worked as a shoemaker. Since arriving at the concentration camp, he had been inspecting everyone's shoes with a pistol in hand. If he found someone without shoes, he would shoot them on the spot without hesitation. He demanded to know why the girl had no shoes. Already shivering in the cold, the girl panicked completely. She trembled and answered in a shaky voice that her shoes had been stolen. The German officer let out a cold laugh and then called Lutz over to his side. He ordered Lutz to shoot the barefoot girl. As he spoke, he handed the pistol to Lutz. Lutz hesitated again and again, unable to take the gun. Although he had been at the camp for 3 months, he had never killed anyone, and standing next to the barefoot girl was his girlfriend, Leyna. Watching everything unfold, he had promised Leyna that he would never harm anyone. Seeing Lutz refuse to take the weapon, the officer shook his head and turned to leave, but then suddenly turned back and personally shot the barefoot girl dead. Seeing her friend shot by the officer, Leyna was overwhelmed with grief and panic. Already pregnant, she immediately vomited, staining the officer's boots. Enraged, the officer raised his gun without a word, ready to kill Leyna. Seeing his girlfriend about to be shot, Lutz panicked completely, not knowing what to do. Leyna, terrified, fainted on the spot. But even so, the officer still didn't plan to let her go. At the critical moment, Lutz grabbed another woman and shouted loudly. He pushed the woman to the ground, yelling to draw the officer's attention. Because of that, Leyna narrowly escaped with her life. After the inspection, Lutz went straight to Leyna's barack. He took her to the secluded spot where they usually met in secret. Feeling guilty, he apologized to Leyna. He said he was useless, that he couldn't protect her friend, and that even when Leyna was in danger, he was powerless to help. Still shaken from the earlier terror, Leyna began questioning him. She said, "I'm not Jewish. I'm not a gypsy. My mother was fully German. I love this country with all my heart. But just because of my skin, they took away my German identity. They threw me into this dark, hopeless camp, tortured me, and made me face death every single day." Lutz quickly tried to comfort her. "To me," he said, "you are German. You are the most beautiful German girl." But no matter what he said, Leyna's heart had already been shattered by the country she once loved. The burning love she once felt for Germany had turned into deep, unforgettable hatred. She told Lutz, "If I ever make it out of here alive, I will go far, far away from Germany and never come back." She added, "You're what they call a true German." Our love was a mistake from the very beginning. Leyna wanted to break up, but Lutz insisted on helping her escape. He said he would leave Germany with her and stay by her side no matter what. But Leyna knew his dreams were just that, dreams. The camp was heavily guarded, and escape was nearly impossible. Even if they did get out, Germany was filled with checkpoints. There was no way they could make it through. The only thing they could do now was survive each day in agony, waiting for the war to end. They thought they could hold on until the war was over. But one day, Lutz suddenly learned from his officer father that the German front was collapsing. His father had already received cleanup orders. The so-called cleanup meant executing everyone left in the camp. That meant his beloved Leyna and their unborn child were about to be killed. There was no way he could stand by and watch them die. That night, he secretly brought Leyna a female soldier's uniform. He told her to go back to her barrack, change clothes, and escape with him on his motorcycle. But Leyna said she would never be able to fool the gate guards. She also didn't want to drag Lutz down with her. After Lutz begged her again and again, she finally took the uniform. But just as she returned to her barrack holding the uniform, a squadron of warplanes suddenly arrived over the camp. They began bombing the area heavily. The explosion woke all the sleeping soldiers. Lutz took advantage of the chaos to grab a motorcycle and prepare to flee with Leyna. But unexpectedly, his father showed up. The officer pulled Lutz forcefully toward a bomb shelter. Lutz struggled with all his strength, but in the end, he was dragged into the shelter by his powerful father. It wasn't until dawn that Lutz was allowed out. He immediately ran to Leyna's barrack, but he saw all the prisoners being marched to the square by German soldiers. Leyna was nowhere to be found. Lutz rushed back to find his father and asked what had happened. His father told him that the front lines had fallen too quickly. Enemy troops were already nearing the camp. The camp's soldiers were evacuating while also trying to execute as many prisoners as possible. His father told Lutz to join the retreating troops. Upon hearing that, Lutz was furious. His beloved's fate was unknown. How could he just walk away? He finally worked up the courage to tell his father, "I've fallen in love with someone you call a mongrel. She's carrying my child. There's no way I'll abandon them and run." Hearing this, his father grabbed Lutz by the collar in a rage. He scolded him harshly, saying he shouldn't let emotions ruin his future, and that loving a woman like Leyna could cost him his career or even his life. But Lutz had made up his mind. He refused to leave with the troops. He had to find Leyna, with no choice. The father reluctantly let him go. Lutz ran frantically around the camp, shouting Leyna's name, but no matter how loudly he called, Leyna didn't respond. Just when he was about to lose hope, he finally spotted her in the crowd. Leyna heard him too and ran toward his voice. At last, they found each other in the chaos. Lutz was overjoyed and rushed to her, but his father had followed close behind. The officer raised his gun, intending to kill Leyna to sever his son's attachment, but Lutz suddenly moved in front of her and took the bullet instead. His father never expected that he would end up shooting the very son he had tried so hard to protect. Devastated, the officer slowly lowered his weapon, watching Lutz collapse. Leyna's dreams of a future with him instantly shattered. The life they had imagined together was now just an impossible fantasy. Leyna collapsed to the ground, staring blankly at Lutz's body, unable to leave. She didn't dare go closer, but couldn't bring herself to walk away. She couldn't believe Lutz had truly left her forever. In the end, she was rescued by an allied soldier. She stared at Lutz's body growing smaller and smaller in the distance, until it vanished from her view. Their love, so pure and sweet, had been crushed by the brutal weight of history. 3 months later, Leyna, who had been rescued, was now heavily pregnant and could barely walk. She was finally reunited with her long-lost family. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.